Bernie Sanders is slamming 13 Senate Democrats for lacking the guts to stand up to Big Pharma after they voted against a measure he pushed to bring down drug costs. The measure would have allowed pharmaceutical distributors to import low-cost medicine from Canada. Among those Democrats who voted against it, Senator Cory Booker. Booker's also pretty cozy with many of those pharma companies in his state of New Jersey. For more on the topic, we turn to Hilary McQuie. She is the Director of U.S. Policy and Grassroots Mobilization at HealthGap. Hilary, Cory Booker tweeted that the reason he voted against the measure is because it lacks safety provisions. Do you buy that?
We don't buy that because this amendment would have allowed us to import drugs from Canada. Most of those drugs that are being sold in Canada were originally manufactured in the United States. They're just cheaper there because their government, unlike ours, is allowed to negotiate prices.
Okay, so those drugs are often manufactured here. And if they're not, don't Canada's drugs, their approval process, isn't it pretty similar to the U.S.?
It is pretty similar, and you really don't hear a lot about drug safety issues in Canada. This isn't just opening the door to any country in the world. It's opening the door to a country very similar to our own in terms of regulation, if not stronger in terms of regulation. And again, the only difference is the profits that pharma companies make.
And on top of all that, the word safe already appears in Sanders' amendment, right?
Correct.
So Cory Booker has received more pharmaceutical manufacturing cash in the last 6 years than any other Democratic senator. Between 2010 and 2016, Booker accepted over $267,000. What do you make of that?
Well, we really don't see this as about any one senator, quite honestly, but more indicator of the power of pharma's greed on Capitol Hill. Our organization fights for access to medicines for people living with HIV, regardless of where they are in the world, and this is a problem that permeates Congress right now. I think it's interesting to note that there was 13 Democratic senators who voted against this amendment. There were also 13 Republican senators that voted for this amendment. So it's not a straight partisan issue by any means. We still have a dominance of pharma greed and pharma funding that affects how politicians act on the Hill.
Right, and there's also other senators on both sides, as you said, that accepted some six-figure donations from Big Pharma. So I know at least on the Democratic side, they include Bob Casey, Patty Murray, and Michael Bennet. So it goes for both sides of those. Also Martin Henrich out of New Mexico. So yeah, there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are taking in Big Pharma. You know, and there's also whispers that Cory Booker has 2020 presidential aspirations. Do you think down the road people will remember this?
I think we're seeing a sea change. There's a near consensus among all of us in this country that drug prices are too high and that we need to do something to get it under control. We need legislators who have the courage to put forward and vote for solutions, not stonewall every strategy that's brought to a vote. And right now what we have is a lot of piecemeal people saying, oh, that's not the perfect solution, instead of coming up with their own. And I do think the voters are going to remember it in 4 years and in 2 years for the House of Representatives.
Okay. Is this their last shot at driving pharma prices down, or do you think we should expect to continue seeing this topic?
I think you're going to be seeing this a lot over the next the next session of the administration. And we should expect that politicians are going to know that voters will not stand for this continued greed on Capitol Hill from pharma contributors.
President-elect Donald Trump has campaigned on a promise to allow for importation of pharmaceutical drugs. Do you think that he's going to keep his promise?
I think it'll be interesting to see if he keeps any promise.
Well, okay. What's your prediction? What do you foresee happening? I know a lot of people are in support of this, but ultimately, what does it come down to?
I think you're going to see activists rising up more and more. We have growing grassroots energy and organization on this issue. It is it's a voter issue that will decide whether people stay in office or not. So I would expect to see a lot more coming down the pike from champions like Senator Sanders and other champions in Congress. And those that don't support those will be noticed, and there will be consequences.
Is this something that people can vote on individually in different states, or is this something that has to come through on Capitol Hill first?
Well, there are strategies out there of having drug pricing policies state by state. Some of those have been well intended, but flawed in the language and execution. So I don't think we have any great examples. There was a voter initiative in California last year that would have made some of these provisions law. But I think we'll be seeing more and more experimentation on the state level in terms of drug pricing.
Now, there's a lot of different people who take drugs for a variety of different reasons. You know, you've got people who have HIV and AIDS, people who have diabetes, those rare occasions where you might need an EpiPen. Who suffers from this the most? Who's going to be the most affected?
Well, it's really the most marginalized people that are affected. The people who have to pay out of pocket for prescriptions. I think the thinking of Pharma is they can charge whatever they want because insurance companies will pay for it. But as more and more people are uninsured, especially if the Affordable Care Act is repealed, we're going to see people really affected by this. Already there's a very large percentage of Americans who do not fill their prescriptions because they simply can't afford it.
Certainly a topic that a lot of people are going to be keeping an eye on because, as you said, it affects so many people. A 2015 Kaiser poll found that 72% of Americans are in favor of importing prescription drugs. Hilary McQuie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.